It's the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, and we are back.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be discussing the latest reports involving Arsenal's alleged, and I use the word alleged, interest in Inter Milan's Achraf Hakimi. Now, he's been linked with moves to Arsenal before. There's been talk of it earlier on in the season as well. There was a lot of discussion when it seemed that Inter's financial situation was going to force them into selling players. That could still be the case come the summer. Who knows at this point? But those rumours linking Hakimi with a move to Arsenal have resurfaced. So we're going to discuss that a little bit, and we're going to discuss the right-back situation at the club in general. Big hello to everybody joining me in the live chat. Hope you're all well. Big hello to X64, to Norwegian Gooner, to Inter, to Chef, CG, to Omar, to all of you. Hope you're all good. Hope you've all enjoyed the bank holiday Monday so far. The sun is shining, and Boris Johnson's just announced at the time of recording that that we're on track to move to phase 2 of our road out of lockdown. So something to uplift the nation, I suppose. Given the way the last year has gone and stuff, it's always positive to hear that things are at least moving in the right direction. And even if things ain't going to be 100% back to normal, they're going to be closer to normal. And that will mean the world to a lot of people out there. So good news, of course. What could be also good news, if it is to happen, is the prospect and the idea of Arsenal going out and bringing in Achraf Hakimi. Now, let's start off with the current right-back situation at the club. And we know that there has been a lot of talk about Hector Bellerin's future. What does his future hold? Is he going to be an Arsenal player come the start of next season? Well, based on what we're seeing at the moment, it doesn't look like it. He's out of favour at the moment. He's not being selected. Cedric was selected ahead of him in the North London derby. Callum Chambers was selected ahead of him against West Ham. And again, Callum Chambers was given the nod against Liverpool. So, there's a lot to think about with Hector Bellerin. And I think that the signs are ominous. I think it looks as though he is probably going to be on his way out of the club. We heard, didn't we, maybe a couple of months ago now, that he'd actually considered leaving last summer. The club didn't allow it to happen. Mikel Arteta personally had a word with him, persuaded him to stay for one more year. But it feels like now Hector Bellerin is at a crossroads, and it looks as though he could be on his way out. What would be an acceptable amount of money to get in for Hector Bellerin? I've always said I probably think we could get about 25 million pounds in for him, and I stick by that. I think a lot of people have almost not forgotten about it, because you can't forget about it. It's impacted our daily lives so much. But I think a lot of people haven't factored in the COVID crisis when they are pricing up players, when they are valuing players and talking about what teams are willing to pay for them. I think that, apparently last summer, the bid that PSG put in or spoke about at least was said to be it was worth around about 25 million by the time all the add-ons were included. I still think Hector Bellerin could fetch 20 million pounds because of his age, because of his experience. His profile off of the field is quite big as well. And I know that as football fans, we don't always pay much attention to that, and we don't always place much value on that. But I think in the eyes of some clubs who are thinking in a commercial way, having someone who's an environmentalist, a vegan and backs all of those causes and speaks positively about other important issues too, I think, adds to his value. I know that might sound stupid to some people, right? But people do think commercially nowadays, right? It's 2021. Football is far more than just a game. It is a business. And these football clubs are a brand. And Hector Bellerin in himself is a brand. I can see some of you guys suggesting that, 10 million with 5 million of add-ons, Xander says. I've seen another one. I'd sell him for a packet of crisps. Aditya says 20 million would be a massive, massive steal, which I feel is close to impossible. I think that Arsenal could do a deal that is worth up to 20 million pounds. I really do, for all the reasons I've just spoken about. The fact that he's being left out of the side now isn't probably helping us in that cause, because you can't then claim that he's an important part of the squad. You can't claim that he's someone we need more money for, and he's someone that we value extremely highly if you're leaving him out and leaving him on the substitutes bench. But on the other hand, Mikel will probably feel like if he is going to go, he should be preparing for the future, and the future, it seems, is one without Hector Bellerin. Cedric, can he do the job at right back? I think he can. I think he's shown that he's a very competent fullback, but we'd only be left with one in the event that Bellerin left. I still don't really think that Callum Chambers looks completely comfortable as a right back. I just don't see it. And particularly in the system that we're currently playing, particularly when there's such a large emphasis on our fullbacks getting forward and helping out with attacks. Now, I acknowledge that Arsenal are a little bit lopsided and that the onus seems to be more frequently on the left back to get forward rather than the right back. And maybe Callum Chambers' ability to slot in at centre back in Arteta's eyes makes him a decent candidate, because when he does tuck in, he's probably a little bit more comfortable there than a natural right back. I don't know. There's a lot of things to factor into this debate, but competition is healthy. And Callum Chambers was really good at West Ham, but I thought that his shortcomings as a right back were glaringly obvious in that game against Liverpool. For me, I didn't, that's not anything out of what I expected or what I thought. I've said it to you guys before. I feel Callum Chambers as a fullback is a little bit awkward. He's an okay deputy. He's an okay replacement in the event of an injury crisis, but nothing more than that. So I look at Cedric as, if Bellerin leaves, I look at Cedric as our only proper right fullback. And I think if Bellerin goes, we'll need to bring somebody in. Is it going to be Achraf Hakimi, though? That is the question. And the reason I've brought this up today and the reason I'm talking about it on this edition of the podcast is not just because it's come to my head that Achraf Hakimi is going to join Arsenal. It's because there has been a report in the last 24 hours from Amalia Fra over at AS in Spain, where she claims that Arsenal are really serious about Achraf Hakimi. She says Hector Bellerin's career is farther away from Arsenal every day. Hector Bellerin's future. Remember, I've translated this article over from Spanish, so sometimes there'll be a little bit of a breakdown in the language, but bear with me. So she talks about the fact that Hector Bellerin is edging closer towards the exit door. That is the word in Spain. And she says that Achraf Hakimi is the man on Arsenal's radar. They say that Inter Milan have put a price tag on him, and they're demanding 50 million euro for the former Real Madrid player. Now, of course, he arrived in Serie A in the summer of 2020 from Real Madrid for 40 million euros plus some add-ons. But he's been very, very key to Inter's success so far, and it looks as though Inter are going to go on and win the Scudetto, which is great for Italian football. Somebody else had to win it, so I'll be delighted if they manage to get over the line. I think they will. But 27 appearances for Hakimi in Serie A this season, 6 goals and 5 assists. That is one hell of a return for a fullback. He's also provided an assist in the Champions League as well, which is something to add. So 6 goals and 6 assists in all competitions. But the key thing here, right, is to note that Achraf Hakimi is not a right back as such. He's not a right back in a 4-4-2 system. He's not a right back in a 4-man defence. More often than not, Achraf Hakimi has played as a wing back throughout his career. That's why he gets forward so much. That's why he's proven to be so, so devastating in the attacking third, because of the fact that he's given that extra bit of license and he plays a lot further forward. Now, if he comes to Arsenal, that means that there's going to have to be an adaptation, right? That means he's going to have to be converted into a right back, because I can't see Mikel Arteta reverting back to that three-man defense with the wing backs. I don't think it worked. I think it worked in terms of giving us extra defensive stability at certain times. But I also think that it limited us in an attacking sense, and that was really, really disappointing. Just having a look at the chat box, I can see some of you saying that the video's gone dark. It looks fine at my end, and I've got it open on YouTube on my phone, and it looks absolutely fine. So I'm not sure what the issue is if you're experiencing one, but if you are, I apologize. Hopefully it will rectify itself. But yeah, at my end, it looks absolutely fine. But there's a couple of you saying that, so I thought I'd quickly address that. Moving sort of back on to Achraf Hakimi and what he brings to the team. He would bring an abundance of energy. He would bring lots of forward thinking. He would bring an intelligence, and he would bring an end product in that final third. The problem is that he's going to cost a hell of a lot of money, as we've already discussed. And when you look at Arsenal's current predicament, when you look at the fact that there's a very strong chance we may be without European football next season, would it be wise to spend that sort of money on a fullback? I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm not saying that this is 100% nailed on or that any progress has been made, but there have been reports linking Arsenal with Hakimi on numerous occasions, which suggests that there's something there, right? There's no smoke without fire. But, whether we're going to be able to get that deal done, I don't know. And we're talking about Odegaard, and we're talking about the prospect of being priced out of signing him, which I think is probably more of a priority. How are we going to afford all these players? I don't know. And that's where I'm a little bit skeptical. But I would like to see Hakimi come. My one concern would be the adaptation from a right wing back to a right back. And in terms of the adaptation itself, maybe it's a seamless one as for somebody who is comfortable with playing at right back or has been comfortable previously in his career. But in doing that, are you taking away too much of what Hakimi is good at? Are you taking away his biggest strength? And in that case, would it be a waste of money off the back of that? I don't know. Will Mikel Arteta be able to get the best out of him in this current system? That's the big question for me around Achraf Hakimi. Yes, the money's going to be a lot. The wages will probably be substantial as well. I'd imagine it'll probably be around about 150 grand a week. But the reality is, Arsenal, that if you want to compete at the top table, you have to pay that sort of money for people. Are the Cronkies going to really back Mikel Arteta? They're talking a lot about it. They're talking a lot about how he's the right man. They say how much they believe in the project. They talk about how we're moving in the right direction. So put your money where your mouth is and go out there and get Mikel Arteta some of the best players the continent has to offer. And then we can see what he can do with it. Because I do feel at the moment that although Mikel Arteta has made mistakes, and there's no getting away from that, the quality of player is ultimately what's letting us down. The inability of many of our players to perform consistently at the level required has been our biggest problem. So yes, Arteta's made mistakes, but give him top players and I think you'll see a difference, because I think theoretically, in terms of the theory that is being applied, I think we're moving in the right direction. Just about. Right, let's get some of your questions. Get your questions into the live chat. I want to hear from you guys for the last sort of 15-20 minutes of the stream. Let's go over there and see what you're saying. Big hello to Ason in the chat there. Hope you're well. Sam says, does this mean they're looking to sell Bellerin ASAP then. It looks that way, doesn't it? And often with transfers, especially transfers of a high profile, transfers worth a lot of money, there tends to be almost an agreement in place way before the transfer is actually completed, or at least an accepting of the fact that deal is going to happen. There probably will have been discussions with potential suitors for Hector Bellerin. I'm sure off the record, his agents, his representatives will be talking to clubs that he feels like could potentially be the right place for him. I think the Bellerin thing is coming. I don't have any ill feeling towards Hector Bellerin, nor do I think he's anywhere near as bad a fullback as some of our fans would have you believe. But I do think it's time to move on for him. And I think a new challenge and a transfer that brings money into Arsenal at a time where finances are undoubtedly tight, it just feels like the best move for all parties. Ason says, I'm not saying I want us to lose games, but only from those games will the ownership properly get behind Mikel Arteta. Yeah, I get that to a degree. And I know where you're coming from. No Arsenal fan ever wants to see Arsenal lose, but you feel like, the Cronkies at some point are going to have to look at this and go, well, the only way we're going to get out of this and quickly is if we invest significantly, and it has to happen. I'm hopeful that they will back Mikel Arteta and that the club will spend in the summer. I'm hopeful that they'll find ways of raising funds despite the losses that have been incurred because of the coronavirus pandemic. But at the same time, if the spend is not what we want it to be, if we are only able to bring in one or two or three top players or decent players, then you will have to, curb your reaction and be a little bit more measured in your reaction to that because of everything that's going on in the world right now. I think that's important. I think it's important that people don't completely go crazy when Arsenal, or if Arsenal, are unable to spend what they'd like them to spend, because the reality is that that's a strong possibility given the current circumstances, not just for Arsenal, for many clubs. Sam says Max Aarons or Lamptey would be about 35 to 40 million as well, though, wouldn't they? Exactly. And this is the point. Someone like Tariq Lamptey still got a lot to learn. I'm a little bit worried about Tariq Lamptey's injuries and the frequency with which he breaks down. And we don't need that on the other side after we already got to contend with it with Kieran Tierney. But you're right. If we were to sign Max Aarons or Lamptey, we'd be paying that English sort of domestic transfer premium. So why not spend the same money or around about the same money and go out and get someone who's regarded as one of Europe's top talents? I completely agree. And Philip says he would be fantastic. Omar says he'd prefer Aarons over Hakimi. He says he'd prefer him. I'm not sure about that. I disagree. But I watch a lot of Italian football, so maybe I'm a little bit biased on that. But for me, no. I would go Hakimi all day. All day. Gooner says, would you keep Oba? If the right offer was to come, I would sell him. And as each week goes by, my price at which I'd be open to doing a deal is dropping more and more. Not just because of the fact that he scored less goals this season, but for a number of reasons. I've said it a little bit earlier on today. I think on the stream we did earlier on, I said that I was unhappy with his attitude, some of his conduct off the field, and I stick by that. Kamal Abdi says that Mitchell from Crystal Palace is out of contract at the end of the season. Would you take him as cover for Tierney? I probably would on a free transfer, but would he be willing to come and play second fiddle to Kieran Tierney? That is probably the more important question. What else have we got? Thank you to Ason, by the way, for renewing his membership. Much appreciated. If you're interested in becoming a member of the channel, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description and signing up. Your support would be very, very much appreciated, and it allows me as a freelancer to spend more time on the channel, and that is amazing to me. To be able to spend more time doing what I love most is is obviously great. So thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody already supporting, and to those of you who might sign up in the coming weeks, days, months, whatever. Steve Stone, one of our members, says, this is the real conversation, Harry. What are the owners going to do? Are they going to back the project? We've been touching on that sort of kind of. And I guess we're going to find out in the summer, aren't we? But it's easier for the Cronkies to shirk that responsibility this season. It's easier for them to dodge it because of the pandemic. It is anybody who says the pandemic has impacted their business and as such they'll be taking less risks actually has a valid point, don't they? It's really difficult to argue with that because we've all seen it in every line of work, I think anyway. There are very few businesses that have thrived off the back of the pandemic or have done better as a result of the pandemic. I know mine hasn't. Mine's gotten worse. And not only has it gotten worse, but I've not been able to go to the games because of the restrictions in place. And that, for me, I think impacts the quality of the content that I deliver. So, I think it's had a negative impact on everyone. And I fully expect the Cronkies to probably use it as an excuse. Yeah, I do. I'd like to think that they'll maybe restructure some bits and pieces again, sort of similarly to the way they did last summer to get the Thomas Partey deal done. But we're going to have to wait and see. But as I say, prepare for the fact that they're probably going to hide behind the pandemic. And therefore, if that does happen, let's not throw our arms up in rage and sort of, act as though we're completely shocked, because I think we could all probably see it coming. Gooner says, I'll sign up, Harry. I'm a big fan of yours, and recently we connected on LinkedIn. Thank you, mate. Thank you so much. It is very, very much appreciated. Honestly, it really is. Let's see. Hambo makes a good comment. He says, if it's a project requires a sponsor. The board is obligated to ensure that project is successful. Yeah, agree. Yo-Yo says, has Arteta shown enough to be trusted with greater funds with how the team has performed? I think, as I always say, you have to look a little bit deeper than results to find that. I think there's been a culture shift in terms of getting rid of a lot of the players that don't care. But clearly, as we saw at the weekend, there are still some who need to go. But you can't just banish a 25-man squad overnight, because you need to have the money to replace them. You need to have the time to replace them. So I think for the most part, we've seen a positive shift in terms of a lot of players who weren't on board, weren't back in the project, being moved out, which is a positive. Tactically, I think at times he's shown he can compete with the very best. I think tactically he's made mistakes at times as well, which was inevitable given his lack of experience. But my gut feel still remains that he is the right man, and I would back him more before I allowed him to go. And if you sack him, then you just end up back to square one again, and square one, just feels like a place I don't want to go back to. I've said it repeatedly. I've said it from the day Arsene Wenger left this great football club. As much as I absolutely adored Wenger and loved him and respect him for everything he did for this football club, I also understood that it was time for him to go, right? There was no getting away from that. But equally, I felt that he could only go if the right successor was appointed, because Arsene Wenger initially had us up here, then he maintained us being here, and then I believe he would have maintained us for a couple more years, just being slightly below that line, which was top 6. So we'd been at the top. He'd maintained the top 4, which was a miracle for many years when you consider the budgets that he had at his disposal in comparison to some of his competitors. And then when he finished just outside the top 4, that was the final straw for the club. But for me, you wouldn't have seen Arsenal in 10th under Arsene Wenger, put it that way. And I genuinely believe that. So, so the biggest mistake that Arsenal have made in the last few years, and you could talk about individual transfers and you can talk about individual players that have come in and maybe not hit the ground running or not succeeded. And you can talk about individual decisions and tactical things. The biggest mistake Arsenal made, in my opinion, over the last 10 years was appointing the wrong man after Arsene Wenger. And now we're paying for that. Just like Manchester United paid for it for years after Sir Alex Ferguson was moved on. And they went and got David Moyes, who, again, similarly to Unai Emery, wasn't a bad manager. David Moyes is proving now that he's a very good manager. Unai Emery has proved at different points in his career that he's a good manager as well, but that it was the wrong fit. And it's always difficult to follow on from a legend. And both of those guys struggled with that. Man United are only now starting to compete at a higher level under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where they're in second place. But I think that is a bit of a, what's the word? It's a little bit of a red herring looking at Man United's league position, because I think that Liverpool obviously have had a terrible season. I think Chelsea had some terrible times under Frank Lampard. That's why they're so far off. I think that ordinarily this Man United side would be third or fourth. So that would be their level Champions League. But it's taken them a long time to get there, to be consistently qualifying for the Champions League again. And they've managed it, but they went through lots of pain to get there. And the situation is going to be the same at Arsenal. And people shouldn't accept it, but have to understand it. Cypriot Gooner says, if there's a cut price on players because of the pandemic, they could take advantage, maybe. Are you talking about the Hakimi thing? If so, then I agree with you. And in general, I agree with your point. The pandemic has had a negative impact on clubs in many ways, but it's also brought the transfer market down to the ground a little bit more. And it's made it a little bit more of a level playing field, I feel. So, Arsenal need to be shrewd. Arsenal need to be clever, because there will be opportunities. There will be football clubs around Europe who will be in far worse states than us financially. And we have to recognize those opportunities that may present themselves, i.e. being able to get a top player in a cut price deal. I think Arsenal need to be shrewd, and I think that they're already working. I like to think anyway, they're already working behind the scenes to make that happen. What else have we got here? Inter says, does this process continue if we don't make Europe? Whatever happens this season, I want Mikel Arteta to be in charge of Arsenal next season, at the start of next season. But as I've said to you guys repeatedly, that is the minute the first whistle blows next season, it becomes Groundhog Day for Mikel Arteta. And he's got to show something then. He's got to show that all of this leeway that he's been given, all of this time he's had to implement his ways, to build his squad, to build his team, has been well spent. Because I could tell you this now, whilst I back him right now, and I still feel in my gut that he's someone who can go on and be a very, very good football manager, if things do not take a dramatic improvement in the Premier League, I'm talking about at the start of next season, then I'll be one of those wanting him to go. So at that point, if 7-8 games into the next season, we look just as inconsistent, just as fallible as we do now, then there comes a point where you have to end the process, if you like, and turn to someone else, because this club is far too big to be languishing in mid-table. It's far too big to be accepting mediocrity over a sustained period of time. Let's move on. Kamal says, Harry, what would it take for you to lose patience with Arteta this season? 12 losses not enough. I've just explained, as I won't go into that again. But yeah, I just feel like those who still back him, and I still back him, I think they're a little bit more, how do I put this? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody's entitled to their view. I'm not saying mine's right and yours is wrong. But I think those who want him out are underplaying the factors and the issues and the problems that he's had to deal with upon taking over this club, i.e. a shit squad, i.e. restricted funds, i.e. disastrous sort of management behind the scenes, i.e., situations with super high paid players who we had to move off the books. I think there's been a lot that he's had to deal with that even a very experienced manager would have struggled with. Even Arsene Wenger would have struggled with. And I think that as a rookie, if you like, I think that's made the job far more difficult than he would have imagined it being when he agreed to take it. Russ Morgan says, if we go out to Slavia, the season is over. I think Arteta will have to go. And Russ, I get that point of view. And if people are calling for his head in the event, apologies, in the event that we do crash out, in the event that we do crash out to Slavia Prague, I won't be arguing with those people. I'll still be sharing my opinions and my views, but I won't be sitting here saying that I think they're wrong, because they'd have every right to call for that. But I think he'll be in charge at the start of next season, regardless of what happens in the Europa League. And it's why I hope that we stay in the Europa League, go all the way, obviously, because this season has the potential, if we were to crash out of the Europa League, in the next 10 days, this season has the potential to turn extremely toxic, and 8 or 9 games of toxicity, in the lead up to the summer could be fatal for Mikel Arteta. I really do believe that. So, I hope that, because I want Arsenal to win, but also because I back him, that isn't the case, in that we're still competing in this competition. Because if we're not, those who are maybe on the fence or who are Arteta out, but open to being convinced still, I think even they will start to turn, and that's the problem. Philip says, thoughts on out of contract players and cheap players from the lower leagues, Championship, bottom half teams in Italy, Dutch, Austrian, and Portugal for squad players. Depends who they are, Philip. It's kind of a bit of a sweeping, statement, and that you say, like, just out of contract players from lower league divisions. I think they got to fit the profile. I think they got to fit the bill. I think there will be some gems that you could find there, and it'd be great if we could, capitalize on some of those opportunities. But it's obviously, people talk about big money transfers and the risk that they bring. Also, it's a risk, I think, bringing players who have not been at the level that we want. Good scouts identify the right ones and, bring them to the club. And there's been many examples of players who have come to not just Arsenal, but the Premier League from unknown waters and come and been brilliant and thrived. But there's also been equally a load of players that have done that and failed miserably as well. So I think it's about the individual. Does the individual fit the profile? Does the individual fit the job that they're going to be tasked with at the club? That's what you got to consider. But I'm not against going and bringing players in from lower leagues or going and bringing players from other countries. I think it's something that needs to be done. It's the only way to maximize what we believe is going to be a limited budget. So yeah, why not? Let's see what else we got. I'm going to pick out one more question, I think, before we jump off. I'm going to go with this one from Misha, and he says, Harry, would you sell Saka if it means we could get Bissouma, Odegaard, and a promising winger? Wow. Really good question, because there's been a bit of suggestion that Arsenal might have to cash in on Bukayo Saka if things continue the way they're going. I love Bukayo Saka. I adore the guy. I think he's a really talented player. I love the fact that he's an Arsenal Academy product. Would I sell Saka if it means I can get Bissouma, Odegaard, and a promising winger? I'm not sure. Would I sell Saka if it meant that I could bring in a midfielder of my choice, an attacking midfielder of my choice, and a winger of my choice? Then yeah, I probably would, because every player has a price for me. And Arsenal's problems are never going to be rectified by just keeping hold of Bukayo Saka. You know, the problems with the team just run so much deeper than that. And if you told me that I could get 100 plus million and that meant I could fix up the squad to get it to the standard I want, then I would consider it for sure. I can't say I would 100% do it because it's tough, but I would consider it. I would consider it, honestly, because, you know, look at Liverpool. Take Liverpool, prime example, right? Liverpool, Felipe Coutinho, talisman, carrying them to sort of results week in, week out, was by a million miles their best player. They never wanted to lose him. Nobody talked about it. It was one of those things that Liverpool fans were going to be up in arms about if it happened. It happened. And all of a sudden, Liverpool completely transformed their squad by just going and signing 2 defensive players who made all the difference. If Bukayo Saka could be our Coutinho, i.e. would provide us with the funds to help take this team up to the next level, then how can you rule it out? You know, I don't get how people can rule it out. If we got the money in for him and we spent it right, it could be transformative for Arsenal. So I'm not ruling it out. You know, if the opportunity was to present itself, I would seriously consider it. But selling him would mean nothing if those replacements or those players that you went and spent the money on were no good. People would look at the Coutinho sale and say that Liverpool completely cocked it up if Virgil van Dijk and Alisson weren't a hit. Luckily for Jurgen Klopp and for Liverpool, they were a hit. But, you know, that's, you know, it's obviously easy to look back in hindsight. But, you know, if he could be our Felipe Coutinho, then, you know, I can't completely rule it out. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people would disagree with that. I know a lot of people will get upset with that in the comments, but I genuinely feel like that. You know, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. Bissouma I like, but am I completely convinced about him? No, I'm not. And I look at him and I wonder if he is, you know, obviously he's very combative and he's very energetic and he dominates parts of the park and he works hard and he closes spaces and he brings you a lot of physical sort of positives. But is he technically at the level he needs to be for us to propel on to being a Champions League club again? Will he progress the ball well enough? Will he be comfortable enough to receive the ball off of his centre-backs because it's clear, and his goalkeeper because it's clear that Mikel Arteta wants us to play that way? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on that one. And that's why when Mishane asked me that question, I'm not as convinced about selling Saka if it's for Bissouma, but there will be other players out there who I'd probably be more willing to take that risk for. I love Odegaard, but a promising winger. Who is it? Are they going to fit in? I don't know. And that's why I'm a little bit sort of skeptical on that specific scenario. But as I say, if we could get somebody in, or if we could get, you know, 3 or 4 players in that would potentially turn our team around, then I'd be up for it. iSlim says, Harry, where is this from? Don't turn to the nonsense YouTubers who put up clickbait. If you're talking about what I've titled the video, which is the Hakimi story, I will share with you where the report is from. Here you go. I won't talk about something if it's not a report from a genuine outlet, and here it is on your screens right there. AS in Spain. If you follow Spanish football, I'm sure you'd have heard of this outlet. They have reported that Achraf Hakimi is on Arsenal's radar, and they talk about the fact that Hector Bellerin is on his way out. One thing I forgot to mention a little bit earlier on, actually, which I should mention, and I'm going to do it now, is the fact that Real Madrid included a first refusal clause in the transfer to Inter. So if Inter were to sell him, Real Madrid would have first refusal on Achraf Hakimi. I'm not sure that they'd exercise that because of the fact that they've just sold him and you know, probably have other priorities. But yeah, that's where the story is from. So I'm not making it up, right? I don't sit here and make up stories out of nothing to talk about. I'm going by what's in the press. I appreciate that a lot of these stories will prove to be sort of invalid, hot air by the time the transfer window closes. But I think it's worth discussing because we are likely to be in need of a right back. And I wanted to talk about whether he would be the right man and what the latest reports are saying. But yeah, gonna leave it there because it's almost 6 p.m. here in the UK. Gonna make the most of what's left of the bank holiday, but I am back on the Same Old Arsenal podcast tonight at 7 with the lads, so come and join us for that. It will be myself, Dan Potts, and Graham. Graham Brooks is with us, so looking forward to hearing his thoughts on the Liverpool game. Graham's like me, he likes to really home in on the tactical side of the game, so I look forward to hearing what he has to say as well. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you smash the like button on your way out. In fact, let's check in on the likes because only when I check it out, do I seem to get them. So let's have a quick look. What have we got here? We've got 48. Let's try and get up to 75 by the time we play the outro. So make sure you smash the like button. Ason says no Lee is not on the Same Old Arsenal tonight, not for any reason other than he's just got something on and he can't make it. So Lee is not with us tonight. What else did I see there? There was something else I saw there. Aditya, that's the one I wanted to pick out. When's the gas tank coming? The 90-min gas tank is tomorrow. The other guys, not me, are off today because of the bank holiday, but the gas tank returns tomorrow live at 4:15 p.m. So we'll be discussing the Liverpool game again a little bit on that. So until then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, smash the like button on your way out, click on the link in the description if you want to become a member, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're listening via the audio, leave us a review and I'll catch you all soon. Until then, take care.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening